Today on Straight Talk Africa, more than 300 million Africans live in arid and semi-arid conditions. The World Bank, along with governments and communities, are combating drylands, desertification, and climate pressures across the continent. That's coming up next right here on Straight Talk Africa. Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa. It's Wednesday, October 8th. I am Shaka Sali.
And hello, Shaka, and hello to all our viewers and listeners on the continent and elsewhere. I am Mariama Diallo, your social media reporter.
Today, we'll discuss the challenges of combating drylands and desertification on the African continent.
And being from a country that borders Mauritania and the Sahara Desert, I can tell you that it is pretty scary. Coming up later in our STA inbox, we'll share your comments and concerns. Hope you'll stay with us.
But first, careful planning, better agricultural programs and water policies are yielding more food production and improving lives in the Ethiopian highlands. My colleague, Paul Cisco, has more.
Drylands in Sub-Saharan Africa make up 43% of the total land area, account for 75% of the area used for agriculture, and is home to 50% of the population. Ethiopia, in the Horn of Africa, was once thought of as a desperate land of drought and famine. But over the last decade, ambitious land management programs have brought change, development, and prosperity to the Ethiopian highlands. Despite climate pressures, there is more growth and less poverty in the region. Magda Lovei with the World Bank Group works with governments and communities sponsoring conservation projects to counter land degradation forces.
The unsustainable use of the land resource, overgrazing is a typical area, but also the deprivation of nutrients from the soil. The lack of water resources. So overall, it's a vicious cycle sometimes, and that's why these regreening and sustainable land management efforts are so important, because they help reversing a very deep-seated, strong problem that countries have been facing for decades.
The strategy of using sustainable land management to eradicate poverty has been very effective.
Erosion from overgrazing is a major cause of land degradation. Today, cattle are not allowed to roam freely here.
The grass you see growing is the result of our work. We now cut and carry the bundles to our animals.
As a result, cows produce more milk, fields are greener, with quicker replenishment, countering losses to erosion. Meanwhile, conservation work is transforming other large areas of once rocky, lifeless land in Ethiopia. Wider terraces than traditional ones capture more water, allowing better, healthier cash crops. Some areas degraded by deforestation are being restored thanks to community-built earthen mounds and new grasslands. Forest management and regeneration bring new income sources, along with better flowing rivers and watersheds.
For many years, the land degradation has been considered as a fate, and we see increasingly that it's reversible, and there are many programs that show a lot of hope for success. And I think the Ethiopia example also shows that it is not just isolated pilots that are successful, but they can be successful at large scale as well. So I think this is really cause for hope and cause for increased efforts to support such programs.
A greener living landscape attracts climate resiliency, community development, and prosperity. The World Bank supports community and government solutions to land management problems. Now, communities are benefiting by implementing the changes that are greening their lands. Paul Cisco, VOA News.
Thanks, Paul, for that report. Now joining us here in our Washington studio is our distinguished guest, Dr. Magda Lovei. Practice Manager for the Environment and Natural Resources Management for the Africa region at the World Bank here in the nation's capital. I have to say, frankly, that I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host you for the first time on Straight Talk Africa.
Well, thank you very much, Aka. It is really an honor to be here.
You're most welcome. Let me come to you immediately, Magda. What was your impression really of what you were able to see in Ethiopia? It looks like you have fantastic results there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just came back from Ethiopia, where I was last week, witnessing some of those things that you saw on the video. It is really encouraging and extremely uplifting to see some of the valleys and landscapes really green that used to be brown and quite hopeless. I was in Ethiopia 10-15 years ago when the picture was very different, and so now it's really wonderful to see some very positive results.
So what would you say is the secret behind that, really?
Well, the Ethiopian success, I think, has a lot of elements. One is that the government has started to work on this very systematically, and there is a lot of commitment to support large-scale programs such as the Sustainable Land Management Program. But I think it's also extremely important that they involve the communities, and it is the communities that own these programs, and it's not just the government coming with some orders. And we see visiting the communities that they are happy, they see results, and they are really for this program. This is their program, so it's very important. Of course, there are many elements such as providing titles or security for the land, which gives further encouragement for people to really work on that land for themselves.
And how important or how significant was the role played by the World Bank?
Well, we provide financing and we provide technical assistance. We also help countries connect, where we see some examples that can be replicated. In this case, we helped Ethiopians to visit China, where there are similar successes. But we are a small part of a bigger program that many others also support. So we are very happy to be part of it, and really proud that we can be part of this success.
Desertification is a major problem in Africa. 2/3 of the continent is desert or drylands, and 74% of its agricultural drylands are seriously or moderately degraded. The areas with the biggest dynamics of desertification are concentrated in the Sahel region, the Kalahari in the south, and the Horn of Africa. To some degree, land degradation affects at least 485 million Africans. Recent estimates suggest that more than 30% of the land area of Rwanda, Burundi, Burkina Faso, South Africa, and Lesotho is severely degraded.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizui. And of course, this is Straight Talk Africa, coming to you live from Washington. Let me come to you again, Magda. Do arid and semi-arid regions have the potential to positively contribute to Africa's agricultural growth and development, in your view?
I believe they do, and some of the examples that we have seen in Ethiopia already show that land can be rehabilitated and it can turn into productive land again after being degraded. We are also supporting irrigation programs that help agricultural production in some of the dryland areas. Generally, I think there is significant potential to help these areas to start generating the economic results that other areas do. But you need some investments, and you need investments in people and also in connectivity to markets, development of skills so that people can also diversify, start diversifying out of subsistence agriculture and start connecting to markets.
What are some of the factors that are driving desertification and encouraging the growth of drylands on the continent?
Well, clearly drylands are naturally dry, but the degradation on drylands also can be made worse by unsustainable practices such as grazing, overgrazing, the overuse of groundwater or surface water resources, deforestation. As we know, forests can provide a very healthy ecosystem and protect from upstream areas. Being deforested can become like a significant cause for downstream degradation. So many of these practices over time have been contributing to further desertification and land degradation. We also know that climate change is going to affect the dryland areas. In fact, some estimates indicate that dryland areas are going to increase potentially significantly, and precipitation in some areas, especially southern Africa, is expected to reduce quite significantly.
Good evening, Patrick from Nigeria. You're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Good evening, Mr. Shaka. Good evening, Dr. Magda and Dr. Florence.
My
question, I want to find out from Dr. Magda and Madam Florence. In Africa, we discovered that people concentrate in using fertilizer in all this farm produce. Why is it that in the 80s and 70s, our people concentrate more in this issue, crop rotation type of farming? And this system now is very, very different, and this shifting cultivation. And the banana, I want to find out the rationale of eating banana and fish. What is the nutritional value of using those two items, banana and fish? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know whether you really got the question so well, or I gather that he was talking about the importance of fertilizers or something of that sort.
Yeah, I mean, certainly fertilizers are important, but I think the other techniques that exist for sustainable land management are equally important. You cannot simply resolve issues by using more and more fertilizer, because that itself has certain implications on your resources, particularly water resources. But certainly a good balance between good techniques, good irrigation methods, and using some of the fertilizers are important. But we also see some countries subsidizing fertilizers, and then fertilizers might get overused. So that's not a simple solution.
Very much. You're tuned into Straight Talk Africa. We'll have more of a discussion in a moment. But first, here is Mariama Jaro. Take it away, Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. And still to come, we'll reveal some of the outstanding feedback we've received from our audience through social media. But now, here is our letter of the week from a Nigerian who has a comment on today's topic. Okugbo Omunuwa Igodalo in Abuja, Nigeria writes, for African governments to win this battle against desertification, the education policies of African states should be strengthened to significantly raise the awareness level of the average African on environmental issues. Laws, especially when it comes to tree planting and irrigation, should be rigorously enforced and assessed annually to sustain and improve the state of our natural habitats.
Thank you very much, Esther Giduya, and welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. Once again, it's time to bring in my colleague and social media reporter, Mariama. Take it away again, Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. Desertification appears to be one of the fundamental causes of widespread poverty and hunger in Africa. Soil degradation is a very dangerous phenomenon, Its effects include deforestation and overgrazing. Many analysts are calling on African governments, policymakers, and environmentalists to make desertification and dry lands a higher priority on the continent. And this leads us to our question of the week, which asks, what policy would you like to see African governments adopt to prevent or reverse dry lands and desertification on the African continent? Well, let's begin with a comment from King Abdulaziz from Accra, Ghana. Well, Your Majesty, if you are a real king, thanks for writing to us. Abdulaziz says African governments must educate our people about the importance of protecting the land so that we can farm and feed our people. Another comment comes from Patricia Namdi from Uganda, who writes, reforestation and maintenance of the existing forests should be encouraged and monitored by African governments. Laws should be enacted to hold accountable those who damage the forest. The burning of charcoal should also be stopped, since it leads to the cutting down of forests. Land should be reclaimed for irrigation to make it more usable. Swamps should be protected to prevent deserts. Well, Shaka, many good suggestions, although I'm not sure how it can be translated into action given the realities of everyday life. On issues of burning charcoal, for example, when I was growing up, I'll give you an example, we didn't have a gas stove. So my mother cooked our food with charcoal, and most neighborhoods had a local charcoal vendor on the corner. Of course, that has changed over the years, and now most people living in cities cook with gas. However, this is not true for rural residents in many countries. Shaka.
Magda, how do you react to that?
Well, I think there are many ways to prevent deforestation. And also there are very interesting experiments, for example, using biogas, which I have seen just recently during my trip in Tanzania, in a village where they used cows to actually produce biogas, which they immediately translated to gas and lighting in the house. We actually are, from the World Bank, also supporting some experiments to channel the payments for carbon reduction that can be associated with such pilots. Mm-hmm. So there are interesting experiments, and I think these can be potentially scaled up with sufficient support. But I think generally there is an issue about reforestation and protection of forests that we definitely need to take seriously, and are working with governments to support programs.
What about the issue of policies? What policies, in your view, for example, do you think African governments should put in place for the sustainable development of arid and semi-arid areas in particular?
Well, there are lots of programs, obviously, that already are working and put in place. I mentioned the policy and practice of providing secure property rights to people. It's a very important part of the puzzle. There are also larger programs that need to be supporting people in dryland areas, because it's not simply about the subsistence production of food, but it's also about providing education, providing health services, social protection to the poorest people. So it's a whole package of government programs that need to be in place to support people in drylands.
I see. Mariama, do you have any more feedback to share with our audience, please?
Well, yes, indeed. Let's move on to a posting from Kasim Mohammed from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, who writes, we need massive electrification to reduce the burning of firewood and charcoal for energy. We also need to make deliberate efforts to make glass, aluminum, and steel cheaper, and reduce the use of timber for building and making furniture. And while we are at it, let's look at another one, this time from Muhammadina Kana Jallo from Monrovia in Liberia, and I'll take a moment to say hello to the Diallo community in Liberia. Well, Muhammadina says, I would like African governments through responsible institutions to ensure that farmers and agriculturists observe a set target number of trees in a given period, both for afforestation and deforestation with a 3:1 ratio. They should avoid mismanagement of integrated land, water, management for soil erosion and salinization, and other forms of soil degradation. Also provide covers to protect vegetables and avoid pollution in light of climate change. Well, Shaka, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Maybe he should be a future Straight Talk Africa guest. What do you think?
What do you think about this, Magda?
Well, I mean, many of the things indeed that the commenter mentioned are exactly the kind of things that need to be done. And in some cases, they are already being done. I think the big challenge is to scale up these good examples that exist, to make programs bigger. And what I like about the Ethiopia example is that it is being implemented at large scale. Many pilots exist many places, and we have these nice examples, but in order to address this problem, really need it at scale. And all these elements of the policy and the programs, they really need to come together to help people in these areas.
What do you think about people who complain about what they characterize as leadership deficit? Because leadership is about helping one's people in times of greatest need. And yet, sometimes you see reports where farmers are basically left to fend for themselves when they face a drought, a flood, or an insufficient harvest.
Well, definitely leadership is important, but I think there are also bottom-up organizations and community initiatives that people can rely on. Of course, when big natural disasters such as droughts or even floods occur, you need to have a good system. And I think in many countries now, the World Bank is working with countries to put in place disaster risk management systems that can provide early warning, the system to respond. But as we are talking about sustainable land management, it's also very important to look at not just how we react to disasters, but how we potentially prevent disasters or really build resilience so that people can react to these disasters much more effectively on their own.
I see. A reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa. To participate in our discussion, please call us at 202-619-3111. The U.S. country code is 1. We'll continue our discussion in a moment, so please don't go away.
In many African countries, a huge percentage of their land area is usually prone to desertification. In Ghana, it's more than 35% of its land area that is prone to desertification. That plus droughts have almost doubled during the last 2 decades. In Ethiopia, about 70% is reported to be prone to desertification. In Kenya, it's 80%. In Swaziland, it's between 48 and 78%. And in Nigeria, according to the UN, at least 35 million people are facing threats of hunger and economic problems due to the present scale of desertification.
Thank you very much, Esther Githuyi. Let me come back to you again, Magda. Talk to us about how important is the international community, especially, frankly, when we come to this business of desertification and what have you. How important is it? Because it must be.
I think it's very important. Desertification affects many continents and many countries, not only Africa. Of course, Africa is probably suffering most because of its very large-scale desertification problem. But there is a very important element of bringing countries together to raise awareness, to increase the commitment, and to help also learn from each other. So I think on the desertification, the Convention of Desertification is an important framework. In Africa, there is also a partnership that exists under the African Union and Terrafrica, which is a partnership that the bank helped countries of Sub-Saharan Africa establish, is a very useful platform to facilitate this kind of common vision and support for programs. But also, I think development partners are very important to support programs. And so we are very happy to partner with many others, including the Global Environment Facility and many bilateral governments to support programs. But I think we could do more, and we could really scale up these programs much more if more would join us.
What are some of the most important problems that you, as the World Bank, have encountered in the process of trying to basically pretty much do what you are expected to do?
Well, developing programs that need to be implemented at a large scale is always quite challenging. You have to have strong capacity that needs to be developed from government agencies down to the local levels. I think one issue is, for us, is always important to see what have we achieved. So there's monitoring, evaluation, impact evaluation of our programs to see what have we achieved with all the investments and technical assistance that we have provided. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. To make sure that countries also start building up that kind of capacity themselves, to make sure that we have the important achievements that we are expecting from these programs.
I see. Well, on that note, thanks to our distinguished guests, Dr. Magda Lovei, Practice Manager for the Environment and Natural Resources Management for the Africa region at the World Bank, here in the nation's capital, and Dr. Florence Wambugu, founder and chief executive officer of the Africa Harvest Biotech Foundation International, who joined us via Skype from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thanks to our affiliate stations, along with our viewers and listeners, we thank you for tuning in. For many of our Voice of America radio affiliates, Learning English is coming up next. And tomorrow morning is Daybreak Africa with James Bate. On behalf of the Voice of America, thanks for tuning into Straight Talk Africa. In the meantime, get better, not bitter, please. And remember to keep the African hopes alive.